Hey everybody, look, I got one of the front wheels. It's truly a Christmas miracle. I was getting ready to bake a birthday cake for these wheels because I ordered them last year in about May, and well, they come from China, and so yeah, there's been a quite a hassle getting these things. And anyway, I got one. I was promised two, but I got a nice fairy story to go along with that whole situation, and I'm waiting on the other one. One only can surmise, one can only speculate, I should say, as to what the issue is. But hey, I'm feeling pretty happy about this one. At least I can see what kind of fender clearances I have, and I'm happy to report that it looks pretty good as far as clearances are concerned. There might be a little issue when I steer the tire here. Might be a little close on the front, down there where it rolls under pretty severely. And we'll have to see. But I'm pretty happy with at least that part of it. So when you work on a project that's this long, and you only spend a couple hours a week on it, it's kind of hard to keep your perspective. This one's been going on since May of 2018 now, and haven't been getting after it the way I want to get after it, but that's just the way it goes. I'm pretty happy with the progress so far as how it looks, which is the important thing. It doesn't look too goofy to me. But anyway, I decided to swap that one tire and wheel in the front over to this side just to see what everything's starting to look like as it comes together. So a little further down the road, when I get the time, I am going to swap those brake calipers out, well, the whole braking system out, for this set of Brembos that I was able to get. And the only problem with this is I have to change out the front spindle on both sides, obviously, and then also the rear knuckle that carries the wheel bearing. The fronts are not that hard to come by and not too crazy expensive, but the rear's a little more scarce because people don't generally break up the suspension cradle if everything's good on it, especially with an SRT model. So they'll be a little bit harder to come by, but hopefully I can get them, and we'll get rid of these RT brake calipers that, you know, brand new rotors and pads and everything, and I cleaned up the calipers, but they're a little lost in there. Wouldn't you agree? And it's like, it doesn't quite make it, but I'm sure that the Brembos will look pretty good in there. Anyway, it's totally a visual thing. If I was really going to go for performance, I'd take the 5.7 out and get crazy and put something bigger in, but I don't have that kind of money. And I'm not predisposed to doing that after I spent so much time cleaning up this motor and putting it in. It'll be for the next guy. So I spent a little time cleaning up the shop this morning. Start with a clean slate and get ready to start on this other side. I've got the quarter panel already cut off on this side. And it's one of those things. It's kind of daunting to get started because I've got to match this side now. It's easier when you're making something fresh, you know. There's no guide to where you really have to be. You just kind of eyeball it up and so forth. But now I have to make an opposite, you know, a mirror image of this. So I'm going to start with this top pattern here, which is something that I put together in small pieces as I went along. Hopefully I can make this one either in a single piece or just a couple of pieces, and then that'll give me some kind of reference here as to how far out it has to be. And so that's what I'll do with that. And so there's the other quarter's been hanging on the wall for almost a year now. Get ready to figure out how I'm going to cut that up to match this side over here. And anybody who follows me on Facebook has seen that finally I've gotten the last of the wheels over here, which is, I'm glad I decided to change the offset. Originally I had matched the offset to the rear wheels, which are covered up right now, and can see that's pretty deep. It's about 2 inches deeper. I was going to match the same offset so the tires would plane out the same, you know, front to rear. But what I ended up doing was just getting a 1-inch spacer. It's a billet spacer that bolts right to the I don't know if you can see it in here, but it's right here. It's a 1-inch billet spacer that bolts up right to the hub, and that sets it out. This way I was able to use a shallower inset over here, which I think looks a whole lot better. A little old school, where you have it shallower in the front and deeper in the back. Of course, in the older cars, you're able to narrow the rear end or put some offset to the inside, tub the wheels, wheel houses and so forth, to get the tire in further so that it would face out. Well, with this car here, you're limited on the inside, so everything has to come out. Likewise with the front, it has to come out to match the rear. So just a little difference. Made these nifty covers here to keep the wheels safe while I'm working around them. Anyway, only took 10 months to get them all four. It was a bit of a hassle, but they're definitely, you know, it's one of those issues where it was coming over from China, literally on a slow boat from China. They closed down the factory over there back in the middle of summer, actually, until they could get a big enough run to justify opening up the factory and start producing wheels again. Anyway, they did offer me a refund middle of the year, saying if I didn't want to wait, that they'd give me my money back. But I really like these wheels, so they're finally here, and I'm pretty happy. Anyway, that's where I'm at with this. So one of the more difficult things with pieces like this is when you're setting them, it's okay to get the shape, you know, make a pattern and then replicate it, which I've done over here. I'm taking this piece of steel, but this, you know, this goes up at an angle, slight angle here, more of an angle there, then it rolls off over there. And how do you determine that? Well, you pick a couple of spots, basically. And one of these gadgets is pretty cool. Basically, it's a bunch of pieces of plastic. You've probably seen it before. I think Eastwood, a bunch of different places have these available. And I have it locked in right now to a pattern, but you just squash it down onto the profile, and as you can see here, I picked up the profile of a particular area that I wanted to copy. I measured up from the corner here and from the edge here up 10 inches, and you can see that I can set this on this panel, I should say, and get the relationship between the glass and the quarter panel and see how that rolls over at that point right there. So then I'll come over to this side and I'll measure up the same distance and set this on at the same location, and this tells me what I'm looking for over here. I'll take this panel off and put a little bit of a round shape into it right there. You can see there's a little curvature going in there. That'll be close to the angle of attack. It won't be perfect. Once I get the quarter panel over here, there'll be a lot of fudging back and forth. But also, when you do that, if you want to save the pattern, obviously you just trace it to a piece of pattern paper. And I have another area over here that I wanted to make sure I got right. And so there's a little mark right here. And you can see there's another mark here. And this gives me the angle of that panel. And come around to this side, and I'll mirror it over here. There's a mark right here, and a mark right there. You can see I'm lining it up with the pencil mark there. Stand that up, and that gives me the angle of the panel here. So it's pitched up at the same angle to receive the quarter panel sections as I put them on. So this is a little bit just hanging out in the wind, so I'm going to have to come up with an adjuster. Tack it, temporary tack it here, and then I will also raise and lower this with an adjuster. I'll show you the type of adjuster. I've shown you this before, but basically it's a piece of 1/2-inch DOM tube, piece of 3/8 slid on the inside, and it just has a 1/4 20 nut welded and a 1/4 20 bolt going through to tighten down on this shaft here, And you can bolt it or weld it and then attach it to the piece you want to adjust up or down. And this will slide in and out, and you can get your height exact, and it'll hold it there till you finish your other construction or do whatever you have to do. But I'll put one of those on the corner back over here, and that'll enable me to pitch this up at exactly the same angle as it is on the opposite side. So I'm swinging around to the other side now, and you know, it's assumed that it would go faster. It's definitely a little different, but it's still going to be a lot of work. Doing it a little bit different. I was kind of flying blind on the other side, you know, planning everything out and kind of cutting things back apart, moving things around to get it to work. But now that I have one side as a reference, it's a little bit easier as far as locating everything. I'm keying off the rear bumper here, and this pattern here, which was a filler after I mounted my quarter panel, I'm actually able to start with this. I've got a pattern off the other side, and I just duplicated it in reverse and copied the angles and set this piece in. And now I'm starting with the top part of the quarter panel, and I already knew that I needed to relieve this part, and I English wheeled this out, softened this area, the area above here where it intersects with the roof, so that it would blend a little bit better. The next thing I had to do was I had to take and make a pattern, which I just took a piece of, well, this is actually a piece of you know, ceiling grid. This is the part that goes alongside the end of the room where you would hang a drop ceiling. But anyway, I had a bunch of this hanging around, so I made a pattern of, on the opposite side of this profile, going around here by just shrinking and stretching this pattern here to get the curvature. Once I had the curvature, that's a bit flimsy. I got a piece of 1/4 inch of plywood and cut the pattern out on that, and then I sanded it out to take out any of the irregularities so that I'd have a pretty smooth arc. It's not 100% perfect. All this stuff has a little bit of imperfection in it, but as you go along, if you can just refine it just a little bit more, it takes a little bit of the work out. And this profile keys in down at the end over here, and it intersects there, and then it goes along top and tells me what the shape of the quarter panel should be along this seam based on what it is on the other side. Now here I got to tell you, it's a bit of good luck that it worked out pretty good, based on the fact that this area here has a substructure that secures the gas filler. And I knew that this was going to be an issue, but out of sheer laziness, I should have established the arc of this quarter panel across this side first, knowing that this substructure was going to have to stay if I was going to keep my gas filler in the same location, which ideally there's no reason to move it. So you know, you want to do that. I didn't want to have to cut this shallower, alter the gas filler, because there's breather tubes and everything else, and you know, these are closed sealed systems. If you don't have all that right, car won't start. Anyways, long story short, I got really lucky, and the shape just skirts across that with a little bit of space, because that's what you want, because I want to be able to put a little padding between that and the actual quarter panel when it's done, so there's no vibration between that and the inner structure that was filled with foam, a thin layer of foam before. But so proceeding a little bit differently, but it's a little bit easier starting from the top down. Now I've bent a piece of 90 aluminum, and I shrank and stretched that to the shape of the quarter panel arc in that direction, and it's clecoed underneath that to support the panel because it's kind of flimsy there. I also went ahead and stretched out that bottom edge to get this to not want to tuck in like it wants to, because the panel wants to, since it's cut here, it wants to roll quickly to the other portion, which I have to have a flattish area right in here like I did on the other side before I start the other area down to the bottom, because that's where it's extended. At any rate, this is where I'm at right now. So I'm going to need some vertical templates to guide me on how to lay out the width of the lower quarter panel. So I picked a spot, which was where I split this front to rear on this side, and here's a little of my primitive rigs here, I should say. I just clamped a level to this body stand, and on the bottom of the body stand you see I have adjustable feet, so I can tip this left or right till I can get this pretty plumb here. And I've run a piece of tape where I want to take that profile, and I have a measurement up from the corner of the deck lid up to where the tape is, and I'm just sighting it up by eye until I get that. You can see just as it starts to show, and that's how I'm going to get the location on the other side. I'll tape it off, and it should be a pretty good approximation of where the template that I take from this side should go on the opposite side, and it'll give me some guidance as to how this should all play out on the bottom on the other side. So I know I showed you this before. This is a shape tool that's just basically a bunch of pieces of plastic all together, and then there's a locking mechanism here once you shuffle all of these down into place. And it's a great time saver. Helps you to develop a pattern up pretty quickly just by you push it in to the shape and then push all these little pieces of plastic down independently till they touch the surface. Then you pull on that lock and it locks them all together, so you can take it over and trace it out on a piece of pattern paper. What I've done here is, you can see I've got the arrows. That's the side. That's the actual line I want the final pattern to line up on the other side. So what I'll do is I'll take a measurement from here. This is already dead level, so I'll take a measurement from here, and I'll pick a spot up off the ground, and I'll mark it back here on the bumper, which is already established on the other side. I'll then measure up from the ground there, and get that distance over here, set my pattern up there. I'll also measure up from the end of the deck lid up the glass and put a mark where it's going to line up at the top, and then I'll just have to get it leveled. Also, it'll be critical that I get the tire off over here and measure in to the outside edge here from a fixed point, which I'll probably take some point on the shock tower that matches on side to side. So that this would be very easy to tip this pattern in or out without having this quarter panel in the way as reference, because this is such a short surface. You could actually get it out of adjustment, and demonstrating by this, you could rock it just ever so slightly and pick up 3/4, a half an inch, almost an inch maybe, depending on which way you rock this pattern. So it'll be critical that when I'm setting it up, I measure from this point inwards to the inside. Like I said, the top of the shock seems to line up right with this point here, straight across. So that'll be the best reference point inside there. Hopefully everything is matched side to side. And so eventually I'll actually mount the tire for a final to make sure that I have the clearances that I have on this side on the other side. But I just thought I'd show you. This is, this has been around for quite a while. Like I said, you just have to unlock that, and it'll shuffle into whatever shape that you decide you need to take. And then you go ahead and lock this end over here back up, and then you can hold that and trace your patterns. Also, what I've done is I've bent a bunch of these little lightweight aluminum L's and just taped them to the car as I was building my paper pattern. This gives me a surface that's 90 degrees to this panel to slowly build up and to tape the pattern so it's not scooting away all over the place. So just a couple little tricks.